Hi, welcome once again to Paul's Palette. Uh, Today we'll talk about one of my favorites, Souza, and with this particular painting, which is Supper at Emmaus, which I acquired in 2009, but it's a much older work. It's from 1975. It's a chemical alteration on paper, and there's a lot of story behind Emmaus, and there's a lot to talk about Souza. So let's sit and chat. Okay, so today we'll talk about Souza. Uh, Souza is, of course, a very, very important persona on the Indian art scene. Souza was born in Goa, brought up in a very Catholic home in Saligaon, Goa, moved to Mumbai and joined St. Xavier's College, from where he was expelled for making lewd graffiti in the toilets. And then went on to join JJ School of Art, from where also he was expelled, but for more esoteric reasons. He participated in the Quit India movement and purportedly joined the Communist Party of India. Once he was out, Souza was, on the Indian art scene, but very peripherally so. But he got together with some of his contemporaries and started what is now famously known as the progressive art movement of Bombay. The progressives, of course, made a seminal contribution to the evolution of the Indian art scene, and Souza is credited as one of the founders. So in that sense, he's got a very, very important position on the pantheon of Indian artists who've contributed to the oeuvre. This particular painting is, set in the context of biblical Middle East. It's called the Supper at Emmaus, and this refers to the famous episode where after Jesus was crucified and before he was discovered to have been, resurrected, so to say, one evening, two of his disciples were walking on the road to Emmaus. Emmaus is, the actual town. There are various stories about which is the actual town of Emmaus, but the conventional wisdom is it's a place which was about 12 to 14 kilometers from present-day Jerusalem. And, Jesus very inconspicuously moves in with these two disciples, and they talk and go towards Emmaus. And then Jesus says that he's going onward, and the two disciples invite him for a meal. And at the meal, he breaks bread and shares it with these two disciples. And, it epitomizes the big, the scene that is now part of everyday church service in the Christian community, the communion. So it's kind of a metaphor for the communion, as is the Last Supper and the Supper at Emmaus. Souza is, of course, had a very, very fractured relationship, let's say, with the church. And after a period, he actually started to display a fair amount of irreverence towards his Christian themes. And so he'd make grotesque faces and things like that. But for the most part, somehow the centrality of Jesus in his paintings was always maintained. Of course, Souza is today famous for a bunch of other categories of paintings. The heads, which are very, very popular and famous, the landscapes, and the Christian themes. He loved the nudes. He loved showing people in the sexual act, and not just in the conventional way. He would do every variant in every possible combination, multiple people together, all of that. And in fact, this is also a chemical alteration on paper. It's a nude by Souza. These are some of Souza's, more, regular features. as well as somewhere he's done some wonderful work. Of course, Souza left India for a while and operated, for the most part between Mumbai, London, and New York. Had a very, very promiscuous personal life. He was married twice. He had mistresses. Of course, one of his mistresses, from whom he had 3 kids, and those kids grew up and became artists in their own right. Lizolet. Souza then, kind of displayed his personal life on his canvases, because you see a lot of very vivid and grotesque sexual scenes. And Souza was a frequent visitor to the red light area also. So you see all of them transported onto his canvases. And you'll see not only irreverence, but there is a very, very, in the face representation of sexual themes. So that's in many ways Souza for you. So my advice to, youngsters who are starting off on this journey is that don't get caught up in any of these tropes. Just be yourself. Connect with what you see. There are millions of possibilities out there. There are people who like specific styles of work, for example, the miniature style, There are people who like theme-based works, like for example, there are some great painters who do landscapes. There are others who do more figurative work. There are some who do, hark to specific subjects like mythology. So Ritika Merchant is very strongly rooted in mythology. Jethro Bach is rooted in the miniature traditions. There are people like Souza who are, painting themes that, impacted them in their personal lives. Whether it was to do with, the church, whether it was to do with sex, whether it was to do with, cityscapes, because he lived in many cities and he loved to kind of bring those cities onto canvas. So you can, choose your journey, whether it is particular artists and their entire genre of work, or is a particular type of work like miniatures or oils or gouache or watercolor. The themes in that sense will evolve in your own journey. But what is a prerequisite is that you fundamentally relate. Something tugs at you when you see that painting, And if you look at this collection, which I have built over these years, there are every category there. So it's very difficult to box them into anything. I think it's all about, in the moment, you liking something and the belief that you will be able to live with it for a prolonged period of time.